Chapter 8.888, Returning to the Age of 1110. Suddenly a cloud of swirling dust and fire appeared. It moved past all of us and encircled Migal. I gasped, thinking that he might be burnt to pieces, but Jax put her hand on my shoulder. "It's all right," she whispered. "Migal needs this. He can't remain a boy all over again. He's too close to his 1111th birthday." "He's that old?" I asked. "Yes," said Jax. "But how?" asked Frank. "Did we travel back in time 1,000 years? Is Blizzard that old?" I asked. "And your mum?" Jax shook her head. "When the curse began for the first time, Migal was sent back through time," said Jax. "He was forced to live in a wheelchair for centuries and then to relive the time back at the orphanage, but the second time around they made him be a crippled up old cleaner. Theevil was especially cruel to him because he knew who he really was. Now that Migal has nearly served his time, we don't want him to wait a moment longer than he needs to. He paid a high price so that Blizzard could have the rescue he so badly needed. Bishop Thieve would have killed Blizzard for sure. He hates him because when Blizzard became a time wizard, he started to fight the evil forces that Theevil serves." I shook my head. "What happened to Bishop Thieve?" "He was imprisoned," said Jax. "My mother was rescued, of course, along with Escher. Stella sorted it all out." Jax stopped and held Sky's hand. "I say Stella, but that's you, darling Sky," said Jax. "Once my mother was set free, she caught Theevil in a huge fraud, one he could not escape. My mother is a force when she wants to be." I nodded. "Good," I said. The dust and fire was still swirling around Migal. Try as I might, I couldn't stop myself worrying that it might kill him and ruin his wheelchair. But after another few minutes, the flames died down, and Migal emerged, alive, enormous, and fully charged. "That piece of filth Thieve!" he roared. "I hated seeing him again. I still wish I could have killed him instead of doing the honourable thing." Blizzard put both arms around Migal and hugged him hard. "I hated seeing him too, old man," he said. "He's a lump of filthy toad mucus rotting at the bottom of a pit of hatred." "Is he still in prison?" asked Migal. "We tried to help him change," said Angel. "And when I say that we tried, I mean we tried every month that he was in prison. That's a lot of trying." "I don't think that piece of excrement could learn a single shred of kindness," said Migal. "Not ever." Molly leapt up to Blizzard and Migal and barked loudly. "Molly agrees," said Blizzard. "She does," said Migal with a laugh. Blizzard hugged Molly again, and as he did, I heard him whisper, "A dog is the best friend anyone could ever have." Molly smiled up at him, her eyes laughing and her tail wagging wildly. Chapter 8.8888. Blizzard talks about the Black Pond. Still written by Ben in black ink. Six and Jem hugged Molly, and then they gave Blizzard a massive hug as well. "I love your coloured coat," said Six. "I badly want one." "What happened to the magic clothes I gave you for your birthday?" asked Jax. Six and Jem squealed with delight and started nodding their heads and blinking and making wishes. In no time, both of them were dressed exactly like Blizzard, with long multicoloured coats, old wizards' hats, and round sunglasses with half of the lens black and half mirror. "My greatest fans," said Blizzard with a laugh. "Come here." Blizzard gave each of them a hug and then lifted Jem onto his shoulders. "What happened when you were in the pond?" asked Sky. I could see that she was a bit embarrassed by her outrageous selves. Blizzard set Jem down onto the ground beside him and let Molly sit on his lap. Six sat next to Blizzard, stroking Molly. Max also joined them, suddenly emerging from Jax. Jax rolled her eyes at Sky. "Too much fun," she whispered. How could she resist? Sky laughed. "Well," said Blizzard, "when I went into the pond, I was drawn down and down, so far that I thought the darkness would go on forever. There seemed to be no end to the pond, and I wondered if it was a gigantic well that hooked into an underground stream." We all stared at Blizzard. It was so good to have him back as an adult. When he'd been young, the sadness surrounding him had been terrifying. We'd all felt it. For someone like Blizzard to be attacked like that when he was so young, it was too much. I'd been absolutely ruined when my parents died. If you haven't read our first book, you won't know. My parents died when the time virus attacked my life and Sky's future. All of that has been undone now, and my parents are alive, but it was so terrible to have to live through it. Even so, I don't think I've ever felt as bad as Blizzard did when he was at Mudfog. In that horrible place, Blizzard's 10-year-old self looked as if he was living in a horror movie, the sort of horror movie that hovers on the edge of nightmares. I shuddered, so glad that we'd been able to rescue Blizzard, and so grateful to Migal for taking on the terrible punishment so that Blizzard could escape the clutches of Theevil. After a few deep breaths, Blizzard started talking again. He stared at Sky and Jax and said, "Going into the Black Pond is a very brave thing." Sky nodded, and so did Jax. "The first time I did it, I trusted Angel," he said, "so I knew that I had to jump in." Blizzard smiled at Angel. "I'm so grateful to you," he said. Angel nodded. Blizzard looked back at us, and to all of you. We smiled at Blizzard, but I knew that we all felt sad. None of us could understand why people like Theevil have to exist. Why did all that harm have to come to Blizzard? "Now, back to the Black Pond," said Blizzard. "I went deeper and deeper, and I was finally thrust into a whirlpool. While I was spinning around and around, all of my selves came together in one big mass. The little children in me, the teenager parts, and all of my adult selves. And then Panda was there too, my spirit escape dog." "Will she ever come back?" asked Six. "Not right now," said Blizzard, "but sometimes when I need to run like the wind and get away from somewhere, then she'll always be there." Six nodded. "What about Molly?" she asked. "Of course," said Blizzard. "Molly is always with me, and she was with me in the Black Pond too, with all her kindness, her love of fun, and her massive calm. Somehow, when we were in the pond, all of that came together and helped me become me. This me, the one I am now, with my wizardly abilities and my calm mind, with my friendliness and happiness, and my fears and sadness, my joy and loneliness. All of me came together down in the pond, and then I think that some of Molly's love stole into my heart as well to give me hope." Blizzard stopped speaking and gave Molly a huge nuzzle on her head and ears. She looked up at him, her tongue hanging out, her mouth and eyes smiling. "Then I was up on the grass again, with all of you, somehow, whole." "Good," said Angel. "Very good. That's how you should be, how we all should be." "Good," said Six. "Very good. That's definitely how we all should be." Jem and Max nodded. "Definitely," they added. Angel laughed at the little girls. "Definitely," she said with a smile.